I just started to hit a wall about the time I was 55. I'm 61 now. I didn't feel good. I had gone to the doctor, had a full workup, and for the very first time in my life, the doctor told me I was obese. And I was 207 pounds on my 5'10" frame, between 170 and 175 now. And so I was desperate to find some sort of a way out. I had a lot of visceral fat. Commissioned officer of the White House in that Homeland Security and Counterterrorism Advisor role. And I had access to the president's medical unit and his doctors. And they gave me the full-blown workup. I had a large thyroid and I had a bunch of other things that were wrong with me. One night I'm in our home in DC. I'm looking online, just like, I don't know what levers to reach for. And I stumble across Dr. Mindy Pelz. And so I was fascinated with her presentation on fasting and this idea of autophagy, where your body shifts from burning fat, burning sugar to burning fat. I liked it from the weight loss perspective, but as I learned more about it, it's like taking out senescent cells.
Cells that live too long, drive inflammation, age you prematurely, everything you were dealing with.
Got into intermittent fasting and some multi-day fasts. And I've heard it said many times, probably at least 6 or 7 times by different doctors, that if you were to do a water fast for 5 days once a year, your probability of getting cancer goes down by about 80%, 90%.
Fasting once a year reduces cancer over 90%.
I overused fasting initially. I was fasting like, dang, this is working good. So I went from 207 down to 157 in 7 months. 157's too small. I was 157 pounds when I was 18. I stopped fasting as much, was more methodical, tried to do what they call the 5-2-2, 5 days of intermittent fasting, 1 day of feasting, 1 day of fasting. 24-hour fast.
When you create a pathway called M, so the is as important as the fast. Wait till you hear this story. Admiral Doug Fears. Yeah. Big military guy in the Coast Guard. Yeah. A rear admiral, as it's called. Ran some big teams. 40 years. Retired now. Wait till you hear what he's doing now. But I want you to learn from this story, because this guy, obviously an incredible leader in our country, but took that leadership, took a hold of his life, and it changed his life. And again, not done there, but you're going to have to stay tuned. But I'm going to introduce you to Admiral Doug Fears, now a good friend of mine.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. It's a great pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. I so want you to tell your story. Obviously you came from quite the discipline, 40 years, Rear Admiral in the Coast Guard, and running some big teams. I was there. Do you remember when I was there? I got to visit it, and I was amazed. I saw these massive screens. Y'all, until you see it, it's amazing. In like live, you see them coming on boats, like drug boats, right? I mean, I'm watching this happen, and y'all are looking at everything that's going on coming in. That's what you were responsible for, right?
Yeah.
Kind of tell that a little bit.
So that was my last assignment. I enlisted in the Coast Guard back in 1982 and didn't plan on staying in. And I went to sea, and I just fell in love with going to sea.
Yeah.
And so 8 ships later, and somewhere between 11 and 12 years of sea time, I fell in love with doing what I did. Most of what we did from a shipboard perspective was counter-narcotics and counter-transnational criminal organization activities. And then my final active duty assignment, when we met and you came to visit in Key West, I was running the Joint Interagency Task Force South, which is the nation's joint task force that oversees all the counter-narcotics activity, principally in the Western
everything
Hemisphere.
From the southern border, which I would argue is probably the biggest drug entry. Am I right on that?
We interdict a lot at sea. The idea is defense in depth, and so you try to get it as close to the source as you possibly can. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of our activities focused around cocaine interdiction, even though we were agnostic to what we interdicted. But cocaine is grown and processed in the Andean region of South America. So we know there's only 5 countries in the Andean region that are producers. And so you can focus on those areas and provide a layered defense in concert with our partners and allies to interdict this stuff at sea as close to the source as possible.
I was amazed, I guess it's satellite stuff, but we were looking at actual live footage of satellites, and there'd be like certain boats coming in, and y'all were looking at every boat. I mean, everything that was going on. That's interesting because like lately in the news, right? I mean, we're just like nailing some of these boats. That's audio, like you don't do that anymore, but you would be.
I don't do that anymore. So what changed is this administration designated transnational criminal organizations as terrorist organizations. And so what changes from an enforcement perspective is before they were designated terrorist organizations, we would try to interdict them, and then you'd bring them ashore to prosecute them. And so very complex legal system when you're operating with other countries. Some countries will turn people over to us, other countries won't. But we would try to get some sort of a prosecutorial legal endgame, right? And so when you designate them terrorist organizations, it's
now we can just nail them.
You can just destroy the target, right?
Yeah. And so, I think some of the people say, oh my gosh, well, how do we know that they're guilty? I mean, if you're nailing one, you know what they got in that boat, right? I mean,
it's abundantly clear when you run it, particularly when you're running cocaine. Most of the non-commercial conveyances are what we call go-fasts. And go-fasts are boats that are probably 40, 45 feet long. And they're wide open, and half of the boat is filled with cocaine bales, and the other half of the boat is filled with gasoline. So it's like you don't stumble across one of these and go, I wonder what
they have in there. It was one of the things I saw with these boats that like they're kind of underwater, like almost like not a submarine, but partial. They call them self-propelled semi-submersibles. Yeah, we're gonna hit those all day long.
And you might, they're big. The interesting thing to me with these is that they're built in the mangroves of countries like Colombia, Ecuador, and places like that, but they bring all these raw materials into the jungle, and they build these things in the middle of nowhere. And then they fill them up and they set sail. And I'm a couple years removed from all that, but my recollection is that you get anywhere from 4 to 6 metric tons of cocaine. In one of those self-propelled.
You retired in 22, as I recall, because I was there for your retirement. That's how I know the date. So not that far removed, but that's what he did. I mean, this was the guy. I mean, he protected our country, man. I mean, honestly, I was amazed when I was there. I felt proud to be an American, honestly. When I saw what we were doing to protect our southern border, I was dang proud.
And you happened, your timing was serendipitous, because when you and Marilee came down to visit, we were having an open house so that our families could come to work and see what we do, because when you're in a classified facility, you can't bring people in there.
I mean, I felt like I was behind the scenes. I was,
So we had to make it unclassified so that we could parade people through the command. But your timing was impeccable.
It was great. I mean, honestly, the technology, I was amazed. I mean, it was like, it reminded me of watching my kids play video games. But massive scale. It's like, wow, this is going on. And I felt more protected. So now with the change, making it terrorists, that, I guess it got easier, right? At least it takes some action.
We'll see. We'll see how all this works out. But
that's great. But anyways, okay, so now we know a little bit about what you do, and I can imagine how stressful that job is. You're working directly with the White House. You're working with big government stuff. So you got a little unhealthy, which is going to bring us into our conversation. But tell us a little bit about that journey.
So
and also part of that is how you ended up finding me through Benazati, one of my students, et cetera, et cetera. But
so that's like boiling a frog, right? The old metaphor of boiling a frog. It happens so slowly that you don't really realize what's happening to you. And I've been asked before how I managed stress when I was younger. And the short version is I didn't do a very good job of it. I just didn't adhere to the principles of stress management. And you get to the point when you're not eating right, when you're not sleeping right, when you're under a lot of stress, when you're working long hours and you're really not getting a break. I just started to hit a wall. Probably about the time I was 55. I'm 61 now. And I just I didn't feel good. And I had gone to the doctor, had a full workup. And for the very first time in my life, the doctor told me I was obese. And I was 207 pounds on my 5'10" frame. I'm between 170 and 175 now. And so I was desperate to find some sort of a way out.
I think there's a funny part of that story that I recall. Because I sat at a dinner table with your wife, but you came home and you said, "Can you believe the doctor told me I was obese?" And your wife kind of was like, "Well, is that true?"
She was like a good spouse. She's like, "You don't really look like you're obese."
Okay.
Right. But yeah, I had a lot of visceral fat, I think, in particular. But, I was coming home at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night when I was working at the White House. If I came home at all, there were nights that I slept on my couch. And I generally, my decision point on whether to go home to sleep was typically if I was done with my work by 1 a.m. And if I wasn't done with my work by 1 a.m., I just sleep on the couch. So, because then I was back up the next morning and back at it. But I just these are all bad hygiene habits when it comes to health. And so I'm like, I don't really know what to do. And I had access to, I was commissioned officer of the White House in that Homeland Security and Counterterrorism Advisor role. And I had access to the president's medical unit and his doctors and all the stuff.
The best of the best.
And they gave me the full-blown workup, and they're really, really good. They're talented doctors and nurses that are there at the Walter Reed facility in D.C. But as you know, they were treating symptoms. I had an enlarged thyroid and I had a bunch of other things that were wrong with me. And the result was I was on meds.
Typical American stuff, by the way.
Yes.
I'm not, bringing it down by any means, minimizing it, but.
And so one night I'm in our home in DC and I'm looking online, just I don't know what levers to reach for. And I stumble across Dr. Mindy Pelz, who's another one of your students. And so I was fascinated with her presentation on fasting and this idea of autophagy, right? Where your body shifts from burning fat to burning sugar to burning fat. And I liked it from the weight loss perspective. But as I learned more about it, it's like taking out senescent cells.
Yeah, which are cells that live too long, drive inflammation, age you prematurely, everything you were dealing with. Yeah,
that's right. And so I had hip pain, I had low back pain, I had brain fog, a bunch of different circumstances. And so I discovered over time, it took me a little while, I got into intermittent fasting and some multi-day fasts. And I've heard it said many times, probably at least 6 or 7 times by different doctors that if you were to do a water fast for 5 days once a year, your probability of getting cancer goes down by about 80%, 90%.
Yeah, that was Thomas Seyfried, one of the leading cancer doctors.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm an oncologist for 30 some years and, realized that senescent cells become cancer cells, right? And fasting once a year reduces cancer over 90%, your chance of getting cancer. Why? Because you're starving down, you're getting rid of, and that's the autophagy word, all these cells that potentially become cancer cells, right?
I've read at this point close to 150 books on cellular healing.
Okay, this is a Harvard grad. This dude learns rapidly and fast, so hence why he was one of the leaders in our country. But yeah, so you shifted all that power to I got to save my life. Yeah.
Well, and it's fascinating because it's, as you begun, I only had a 10th grade biology class. And so to go back into this, which was amazing to me, to just go, you can understand how your body works.
You went Harvard. Wait, you weren't West Point. You were.
I went to the Coast Guard Academy. For undergrad.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And went to the Naval War College and also Harvard for my graduate degrees.
Yeah.
But I, all that had to do with national security and public administration and the functioning of government. Any of the service academies you're required to take, you get a Bachelor of Science degree. Everybody does. And so you've got to take a couple semesters of calculus and chemistry and physics and things like that. And so it's not that I'm unfamiliar with science, but it just wasn't my discipline. You know, I wasn't training to do anything in the sciences.
Yeah, but you had enough to dig into the literature a bit, dig into some knowledge. You know, like you said, you read 150 some books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting.
You read my Beyond Fasting book. And by the way, we only had it out for a short period of time because we're relaunching it.
You know how many times I've loaned that book out to people?
I know. And, you know, because I was unhappy with it. And I'm such a perfectionist. I took it off and I had really unhappy people about that. So you were one of the fortunate ones that you actually.
Well, I started to tell people because your book is the best book I've read on fasting. And I've read it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. There was so much of it that I just wanted to do better. But anyway.
So I would tell people, I'm like, you got to read Beyond Fasting. And another good book on fasting was Dave Asprey's book, Fast This Way. And then, of course, Mindy's written a good book for fasting for women, Fast Like a Girl. Anyway, I would recommend your book to people. And the very first time somebody came back to me and go, it's not for sale. And like, if I want a copy, it's used and it's $150 on Amazon. And so I started to poke you to go, you need to republish that thing.
Yeah, I know. We are actually.
It is a fantastic book.
Working on that.
But it's you know, this idea of being able to lose weight, and I overused fasting initially.
Big mistake people make.
Yeah. So I was fasting. I'm like, dang, this is working good. So I went from 207 down to 157 in probably 7 months.
Yeah.
And 157 is too small. I was 157 pounds when I was 18.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And anyway, so, you know, I stopped fasting as much, was more methodical, tried to do what they call the 5-2-2, you know, 5 days of intermittent fasting, 1 day of...
That's my principle.
Yeah, that's right. But 1 day of feasting, 1 day of fasting, 24-hour fast. In fact, I did a 22-hour fast yesterday and ended up breaking it, as I told you, at Ruth's Chris last night.
You might have went to Harvard, but just so you know, 5-2-2 doesn't add up to 7 days. It's 5-1-1 or 4-2-1.
That's right.
Yeah, so
that's right.
Yeah.
But it's this idea of fasting, as you're acutely aware, getting into autophagy, and then breaking your fast with enough protein to trigger mTOR. And so
feast famine.
You're cycling.
Autophagy, you're breaking down all the bad. When you start feasting again, you create a pathway called you build new, which is the mTOR pathway, right? Yeah. And
I don't know, I've never known the proportions, but in my mind, I've always thought, you know, 60 to 70% of the time, maybe autophagy, 30 to 40% of the time, maybe mTOR. Bodybuilders are in mTOR all the time.
All the time, which ages them prematurely. You don't want to be in mTOR all the time. That's a building pathway, an anabolic pathway.
That's right.
There's healing to it. But when you stay there, you actually start... Really, you can lead to cancer. You can lead to more inflammation, which bodybuilders do. And
so the other challenge I had was I had a lifting accident when we were moving back in 2020, and I limped for almost a year, and my right hip just hurt. And I was listening to Ben Azadi's podcast, and he interviewed Dr. John Lawrence. And John was, as you recall, he was the one that actually connected us both personally. But John has a clinic in Sarasota, and he used platelet-rich plasma. And I had gone to the traditional orthopedic doc, and he said, I can take the pain away, and you're going to need a hip replacement at some point.
Yeah.
And so I said, I knew there was something more. And, you know, this wasn't abundantly clear to me at the time, but when I first enlisted in the Coast Guard, I became an electronics technician. And so back then, you're dealing with vacuum tubes and migrating to transistors and resistors and diodes and capacitors. We used to have to troubleshoot things down to the component level, replace the component, and then make the machine work again. And so this idea of troubleshooting down to the root cause had been trained into me.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really no different in the human body.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's like a multivariable problem. Because symptoms present themselves differently depending on the circumstances. Anyway, this made sense to me. And so when I went to see John, and he's such a great guy.
Yeah.
He said to me, he's checking out my hip with the ultrasound, and he's going, ooh. And I'm like, all right, doc, can you help me? And I said, can you make me better? And he just smiled at me with that Laurent smile. And he just goes, it's what I do. Right? And so he and I have become really good friends too. But I've probably been to his clinic 8 or 9 times in Sarasota, advanced rejuvenation. But, you know, he got me into using exosomes and stem cells and doing other things.
He does a lot of great work, you know.
And he essentially said, if you've still got tissue there in the joint, I can rebuild it. And so that's kind of the pathway we've been on. And then you find these other modalities that are beneficial. I've gotten into acupuncture, gotten into licensed massage therapy, and it's really hard to find a really good licensed massage therapist. And I found one down in the Lower Keys. I don't know that you met her we had a reception one night at my quarters down there. She was out back with my chiropractor.
Oh, right. I met her. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And so she was amazing, able to unlock a lot of myofascial stuff that just made the functionality of my hips and the joints better.
Yeah.
And then I still need you to give me a neck adjustment, by the way.
But I can't do that anymore.
but the chiropractor I used down there was Dr. Paul Barrett. And he's so good, and he self-describes as a Palmer Gonstatter, which informs his technique. And I just never found anybody that was effective at adjusting me the way that he was. And I've been stationed all over the place, and I always try to find a new chiropractor, and you're like, this is kind of a letdown. And so it was good to go back to Paul and be able to get treated by him. Same thing with LMT. Like, it's really hard to find a good LMT that can unlock stuff for you. And the current guy I have is up on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, where I live. He's out of New York City. He's blind. But he's just like, he wanted to find a profession that he could not rely on his blindness to be able to be an expert at what he's doing. So he gets in and feels everything, and he's able to help me quite a bit.
Yeah.
But it's a multimodal maintenance thing.
So that was okay. So fasting really got you to take off the weight, right? And then you learned a lot of my diet variation principles, feast, famine, right? And then you were in ketosis for a while. You learned even the rotate in and out of these diets. So talk about that, because I want people to learn. So again, you were on a 4-2-1, so you were 4 days low carb.
Yep.
2 days of fasting or feasting?
Feasting.
Okay, feasting. 2 feast days. That meant high protein, or maybe more meals that day. Yeah. Could have been, 3 meals a day as opposed to 1 or 2, right? That you were on the 4 days. So those 2 days remind your body it's not starving, right? Very important. The feast is as important as the fast. And then you would do at least 1 day of 24-hour fast where you wouldn't eat for 24 hours, just water.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was also very successful, still am. Had 1 meal yesterday, probably on course for 1 meal today. But I also have days where I wake up, eat breakfast, 3 meals a day, which you made the point earlier that a lot of people are abusing fasting. They're doing too much of it. They're not doing those feast days that remind the body it's not starving. They're not doing the feast days that put you in that mTOR in build, so you keep your muscle, your joints healthy, right? So the feast is as important as the fast. So you did that. Now let's talk about what diets were successful. Right. So, you went into keto. Yeah.
I've used a lot of ketogenic approach, low carb. Right.
Yeah. In keto, I'm always trying to teach in it. Right. Because we have people out there that like, what is keto? Right. I mean, a lot of my followers don't know. Keto is a low carb, typically under 50 grams a day of carbohydrates, which force your cells, and you heard Mindy say this, force your cells, instead of burning carbohydrates and sugar, to use fat. So you become a more efficient fat burner in ketosis, right? So you made that shift over, and
yeah. So, and it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong on the timeline, but it usually takes you a couple of weeks to get fat adapted.
It's true. The average person takes 2 weeks to get fat adapted, meaning you're using fat as your primary energy source instead of sugar.
Right. And then you can become keto adapted beyond that.
Yeah. So now you're using ketones. Your brain uses ketones.
That's right.
And you're like, I feel amazing. My brain's firing. Right. Yeah.
And so I've enjoyed that approach. I also learned about the principle of hormesis through you and those who have learned from you. And this simple idea of a stress that is not a chronic stress, but is that, I guess, best characterized as maybe a micro stress. And you do that by fasting and feasting. You do that by exercise. You do that by cold plunge. You do that by
you stress the body,
sauna.
And if you adapt, the body gets stronger.
That's right.
Right. And changing diet is a stress on your microbiome. It's a stress on your whole system. Your body has to reach for new energy sources like fat versus sugar. So that stress, when you adapt, your body becomes stronger.
That's right. And so when I go out the door in the morning, because I stack a lot of these things, I either do them in sequence or I do them at the same time. But my morning routine, the very first thing I do is I get on my pulsed electromagnetic frequency therapy mat. So I do a round of PEMF. I do breath work while I'm doing that. And so that's usually 16 minutes, which is 2 cycles on my machine. And then I get into my morning devotion with my wife, and we read the Bible and pray and usually get a couple of pages done in a book. And then I'll do a cold shower. Our groundwater where I live is about 58 degrees.
Which, by the way, studies show that a cold shower about that temperature is, for most people, more effective than the 3-minute really cold bath that a lot of people are doing, because of the body's ability to adapt.
Right. So. And I feel, and I'm in ketosis typically in the morning. And I walk out the house in the morning, just feeling like $1 million. But it's high energy, and I really enjoy the way it makes me feel, right? Because I got something back that I thought was lost forever. And let that sink in a little bit. Like, when you follow the principles of fasting and feasting, when you're following these principles of hormetic stressors, like at 55, how easy would it have been for me just to surrender and go, I'm getting old. I'm not what I was when I was 20 or 30, right? I'm getting old. And I could have easily given into that. But I didn't.
Most people do. And the thing you didn't give into is the medication they put you on for the symptoms. We'd be having a very different conversation. You wouldn't even be here if that was the choice. But most people make that choice, not because of any other reason, but that's just what you do. And they're not experts. So they think their doctor knows best. So they end up on the medications.
Yep. And I was on cholesterol and heart meds. And within 6 to 8 months, I was off both of them.
Now, you were working with some of the top doctors. Were they blessing that, or were they questioning that, or how did that go?
This was after I'd left DC.
Okay.
And so I was down at my last duty station in Key West, Florida. And so I was
that's when I met you.
Dealing with the physicians down there who were good. But, most people, when you have a conversation like, I think I can reverse type 2 diabetes.
What do you mean? Yeah, you have that forever. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and some of the books that I've read are some of Jason Fung's work, who's written extensively.
Jason's lectured at my seminars. Super guy. Yeah. Just amazing.
Amazing communicator. Distills things down. The Obesity Code and the Cancer Code are the 2 books that I read by him. But it just reinforces all these principles to go, this is a lifestyle change. It is. And you can do some things that are probably excursions from what the proper lifestyle ought to be. But God gave us an amazing body, and if you remove the interference, and I love your saying, I repeat it all the time, if you fix the cell, you get well. And it's a very simple but profound statement. And if you're able to remove those interferences, cycling into and out of autophagy and mTOR and doing all the other things, clean eating, limiting ultra processed foods, those sorts of things.
Yeah, and detoxing the cell, the toxins accumulate there. Fix the cell to get well. How we age, it's determined by how healthy our cells are, right? How good we feel is determined by how healthy our cells are. That's where our DNA is. That's where we make energy. And everything that how we feel is determined there, right? So, when you look at these new tests that determine your age, so your cellular age is very different than your biological actual age. So you could be 60 like us and have a cellular age of 30, which means that, your cells are functioning like a 30-year-old, which means you feel like a 30-year-old. Yeah. But these principles that we're discussing is how you get there. It's like, right. You got to get rid of the toxins. You got to upregulate these pathways. I really should put it, because people are probably like, they want to know more about fasting. So my team, I'm going to challenge my team. I have a whole guide on how to do everything you did. It's a guide. I just have to get it to you all. So I'm going to process that. We'll probably put a link to get it or something like that. But because people, they're writing notes, but it's hard for them. But if I give them the guide, they'll be able to do it. But because you can't get my book like he did.
You can for $125.
How much you selling yours for?
So every time I loan it out, and I've loaned it out probably 10 times. Yeah. I'm always afraid that I'm not going to get it back.
You forget who you lend it to sometimes. Like, right. Where is that? Right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Maybe that's the strategy. Maybe I shouldn't reprint it. Maybe we should just see if the price gets up to $1,000 a book, and then release them strategically. No, the idea is to change lives, obviously, but I just want to make it better. But
so one of the other things that and this is when I was under John Lawrence's care down in Sarasota, I had some symptoms present themselves in a way that he said, we ought to do a toxin panel on you. And so I was unaware of having toxins in my body. And so the toxin panel came back. And
by the way, everyone's unaware of having toxins in their body, meaning, we don't think of it that way, right? But, the reason why most people don't feel well and have, early disease, chronic disease, is because of toxins in the body at the cellular level.
Yeah. So I was diagnosed with black mold toxicity. I had mercury toxicity. I had Lyme disease.
And these are all neurotoxins, meaning they accumulate in your nerve system, including your brain.
Yeah. And then later I was diagnosed, as you and I were talking over coffee this morning, I was diagnosed with babesia. I never heard of babesia. And so, when you think about these things.
That's a bacteria associated with Lyme disease.
Yeah. And so it diminishes your red blood cells' ability to deliver oxygen around your body. And that results in things like brain fog and fatigue. And
by the way, I want to point out, though, everything you just mentioned is common, not normal, but it's common in people who end up where you ended up, right? Overweight, right? Struggling through, using stimulants, right? I mean, I'm speaking to most Americans right now, right? But the immune system the force field that protects us comes down, and then these pathogens start to build up. We end up in mold exposures unknowingly. We accumulate the mold. Heavy metal exposures are around us. See, when our cells are working good, we get rid of them and they exit. But when we're not healthy, we start accumulating them. Yeah. And these toxins accumulate. They're called persistent toxins in the literature, meaning persistent. They stay with you. These aren't normal toxins. And the neurotoxins are persistent, meaning they build up. So when you look at someone who goes, what happened in my life? If I had special goggles to put on, I would see mercury and aluminum in your brain. I would see, all these other biotoxins and bacteria in your gut microbiome. But that's why people don't feel well. So we have to get rid of them correctly.
Yeah.
And that's
and the metaphor that was powerful for me was this idea of the toxic bucket. Mm-hmm. Right.
I love my bucket theory. It's right here.
And then it fills up over the course of your life. And, it wasn't a problem when I was 30 and I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Congratulations. Your bucket's full.
Here's the bucket theory. You ready? So watch. Here it is. Let me make it better.
There you go.
Can you see that? This bucket's more full. Now imagine if it were really at the top. That's where you were, bro. Yeah. Okay. Your bucket was that full, meaning a little bit of stress. And look, all those symptoms start happening. The water's overflowing, the damage was happening, right? And people medicate that away. Right. And, eventually maybe they start even using supplements, biohacks. But how did you get well? We had to empty this bucket, right? Now this person, this is where you are now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe a little more full. We're going to get you down here.
Got a little more work to do.
But look at the stress. I can do this, right? Nothing coming out, right? This person has no symptoms. They get emotional stress. no symptoms. They get a lot of other stress, physical stress, they can handle more, no symptoms. This person, yeah, a lot of symptoms with a little bit of stress, right? Yeah. That's where you were. So,
yeah. And so methodically kind of detoxing. And so it's made me feel I for probably, so that was 6 years ago for me that I hit the wall. Probably within 18 months, I felt 300% better. Mm-hmm. And I learned, not that I discovered it, but I became aware of the fact that I could control these things.
Yeah.
And so my wife has very graciously done all this stuff shoulder to shoulder with me. So Kate has been a big player in us getting well. We went through our whole house, cleaning solutions, deodorants, shampoos. Like, I don't get anything out of the regular grocery store anymore.
Do you still watch my Instagram, or am I boring you these things?
No,
because I talk about all these things. Meaning, yeah. I'm showing people like this. Don't use this shampoo. Don't use this. Don't use that. Right.
I have a smaller presence on Instagram, but I do see your video feed pops up for me on Facebook pretty regularly.
And the reason I said I wasn't being a wise guy, meaning like know everything I teach, right?
Yeah,
so yeah. So it's
and it's I mean, like you're the fountain of most of what I've learned through Mindy and Benazati and John Lawrence and others. But I'm just like, I do want to say I'm grateful for you and your work in this space, because
appreciate that.
It's changed my life.
Yeah.
And I'll never be the same.
Yeah.
I don't know how long I'm going to live, but when you were talking about biological age and so I'm 61, but I use a blood testing service called Function Health, which is Mark Hyman's pet project. But they estimate that I'm 47 point something years old.
Yeah.
So I would love to have known about this before I started making the improvements, because I'm pretty sure I was 10 years older than my biological age.
I was 11 years older at the cellular age than my biological age. Yeah. Now, now I'm much younger. The last actually DNA methylation test had me at 14 years younger, but I got to do. How
powerful is that? You know, to know that you can just make some changes today, tomorrow, this week, and in 6 or 8 months' time, you can be 10 years younger than you truly are.
Right. I mean, people just have to commit to the process, right? And unfortunately, there's a time and a place for medication, but medication's not bringing health, right? Typically, it's just removing a symptom. And most people don't think beyond that, right? It's like you don't lack aspirin or Tylenol. It's not why you have pain, because you lack it. Yeah. If that were the case, then you should take it. Right?
And I can't tell you, I used to eat Advil all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd go to Costco and get the big things Advil, and I don't know that I've taken an Advil in 5 or 6 years.
Well, people will know when this was done, but the announcement yesterday, Tylenol connecting to autism. Trump and all Trump forums spilled the beans on the whole vaccine connection to that, which they're not finished with the studies, but preliminary studies are showing the connection. And if you're a mother's taking Tylenol, it makes it even worse because of the acetaminophen, which there's a reason for that, by the way. It affects certain pathways, cytochrome 450 pathway, which is a detox pathway. Acetaminophen affects that. Acetaminophen can compete with folate receptors in the brain, which neurodevelopment, certain brain disorders like autism, neurodevelopmental problems occur when you block folate. And also it parallels some of the detox pathways like glutathione. So the brain inflames. And then when you hit them with a vaccine and a mother's, challenging that pathway with acetaminophen, it's the 1-2 punch. Yeah. So they presented yesterday. We were laughing about it because I think the plan was just to present the acetaminophen part of that.
Right.
The Tylenol part of that. And Trump, like he does best.
The president might have had another plan.
He just couldn't wait to get to it. Yeah. His heart was for the kids. I mean, you can see it. He said 20 years ago, Bobby, we talked about this, right? Yeah. That why is autism? Look, to the point, the medical community right now with autism makes the statement is just genetic. Matter of fact, the billions of dollars that have been given to solve this problem have all been driven at genetics as the reason. Hold on a second. Don't insult our intelligence. Not that many years ago, it was 1 in 30,000 cases. 1 in 30,000 would have autism, right? Then it went to 1 in 20,000. Then it was only 20 years ago, it was 1 in 10,000. And now it's 1 in 31. Boys in some states, 1 in 12. 1 in 12. It may be in California 1 in 10. Yeah. Dude, those are scary numbers. And that scared the crap out of Trump and others to the point where they were like, you have to do something. I mean, Oz was up there going like, he put the pressure on us. He's like, you have to do something right now. So that's why he was dumping everything that they already knew out there, right?
Well, there's so many other things like that we've watched the impact on the population.
Yeah.
I think of the correlation, not causation, or at least not scientifically demonstrated to be causation, between the consumption of seed oils and obesity.
Oh, gosh. Let's talk about seed oil. Oh, let me finish that point first. So the point is genetics don't change in 20 years, 30 years, even 100. Genetics change generations. It takes even to change a gene. It's not. It's like for those numbers, you know what their answer to that is? Oh, we just got better at diagnosing it. No one believes that. Nobody believes that. But anyway, so the point is we're doing something to cause this. Let's figure it out. So all these things that we're talking about are the solution. Detoxing at the cellular level, all these pathways that happen at the cell, that methylation folate pathway is just one of them. But okay, so seed oils, that was a big change with you. Yeah. You do what I do now. You go to restaurants and you say, hey, I'm allergic to seed oil.
That's right.
Because we don't want it. What did you learn? You've read a lot. What did you learn about seed oils?
So I think, I can't remember the first person I heard talk about it, but the first book I read about it was the work of Dr. Kate Shanahan. And
she's been a real voice for this, giving her amazing credit and a real, founding doctor, mother, father.
And she was, I think, if I remember her backstory, she was a biologist and was about to embark on a career as a PhD in biology, cellular biology. And she decided somewhere at the last minute before embarking on the PhD program to become an MD. And so she ended up becoming a doctor, but she's got a very unique perspective as a doctor because she's a cellular biologist. And so these seed oils emerged back in the late 19th century in the forms of things like Crisco, and then have just really become ubiquitous. But she refers to the Hateful Eight. I don't know that I have them all memorized, but canola oil, corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, cottonseed oil. What am I missing?
Vegetable oil. Vegetable oil. And then, grapeseed oil.
Grapeseed oil.
There you go, 7.
So, I remember reading this and I looked at Kate and I said, let's go to the kitchen and open the pantry. And we just pulled out everything that was
cleared it
bad
out
for you and cleared it out. All done. Haven't been back in our house again. Now, the challenge with a lot of those things, because they hide in plain sight, they get into a lot of processed and ultra processed foods. And I said in one podcast I did that I don't shop around the interior aisles. And I got home and Kate heard me say that. And she goes, you don't shop, period. I do the shopping. So, honey, I acknowledge that you shop for us.
On the exterior aisles.
Around the perimeter of the grocery store where all the fresh fruits and vegetables are. And so we've really gotten quite good at that. Our home is, we like to say it's a sanctuary. So with the exception of my 20-year-old who has his own wallet and car, and he'll bring some stuff into the house from time to time.
Yeah, it's hard to control that. Right?
Yeah, but I mean, when you are aware of things like seed oils, I read more labels now.
Because that's where they're hidden. They're hidden in the labels.
That's right. Well, like last night, I went to the Roost Chris here in Salt Lake City, and I was talking to the waitress as I was ordering my meal, and I said, "Could I get the salad?" And she goes, "Well, what kind of dressing do you want?" And I said, "I don't care for any dressing." And she goes, "I don't know that I've ever had somebody order a salad without dressing." And
wow, I guess I never ate there because we never the dressing always has seed oils in it.
That's right.
Always.
That's right.
Yeah. So I just say can I pure olive oil on the side? I make sure it's a pure olive oil, not a cut olive oil.
That's right. Because it's my understanding that the FDA requirements, if you've got an oil that's called extra virgin olive oil or olive oil, as long as it's 80% that, you don't need to disclose what the other elements are in the seed oil. So your sourcing of a high quality extra virgin olive oil is important. But salad dressings, condiments of all sorts,
they're all polluted.
I don't, and you look at ketchup when you go to the restaurant. It's got high fructose corn syrup in it and other things. And so I've just tried to learn how to, eat as cleanly as humanly possible. Sources.
What Kate Shanahan, right? Do you remember Benazati asked her the question of what's worse?
Cigarettes?
Yeah, or seed oils. Do you remember the answer?
That's right.
Yeah.
She'd rather smoke than consume seed oils.
And the reason for that, because that's kind of a shocking statement, that's why it works, to get people to understand how dangerous the stuff is that these oils stay around. And I used to say, for 4 months is the half-life. Now there's newer studies showing 658 days or something like that, whatever, let's just say 2 years half-life, meaning that they stay in your cells for that long. So they accumulate, like we talked about the toxins, persistent. They stay in your cell, they stay in your membranes. And I could do a whole lecture on the importance of your cell membrane as far as how your hormones work, how well you feel, how well your brain works, how well your energy, all your membranes are linked to all those things, how you get toxins out and good things in. That's your membrane. There's a saying, life and death begins on the membranes. Your hormone health begins on the membranes. But those oils come in because the omega-6 is so important in the membrane. But in these rancid seed oils, because they don't take heat in the processing of food, they go right to where they should go, but they're rancid, they're adulterated, they're damaged, so they drive inflammation, and that's the problem. Yeah. So they erode people's health, and unknowing.
Yeah, when you've been doing this for your whole life, unwittingly, what's the term, inflammaging?
Yeah, you inflammage, and then you add the toxic component. Seed oils and toxins are why Americans are so dang sick. So sick.
Well, I was telling, I've got a couple of restaurant owner buddies over where I live, and I was telling them about your friend Giuseppe here in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, my favorite Italian restaurant in Salt Lake. Yes, Antica. Yeah. Yes, you have to eat there.
And so when I was out here a few months ago to visit Dr. Chandler,
I took you.
We went out, and it was a fantastic meal.
Yeah.
And
authentic Italian.
Authentic Italian, and here's a chef who lost a bunch of weight himself by shifting away from some of these rancid oils.
Yeah, I was a pest in his restaurant, right? I'm going, this is a real Italian restaurant. They came from Italy, him and his father, his family, right? Yeah. It's like, but you know what they did? He tells you, he's like, listen, in Italy, it was always 100% olive oil, right? I mean, everything, right? It's, the best of the best. But when they came here, they're just like, oh, here's the oil we use. So he just said, we just started using the American oil, because that's what we had access to, right? Canola, vegetable oils, right? Yeah. And, he said that, you could see the shift in the quality of the food, right? But he didn't know it was the oils. But I'm going, you can't use this oil. You have to use this oil, right? So he shifted to 100% olive oil, back the way the old country did. Then he was already getting the grain. They were only using grain from Italy because it was the quality, right? And so they were already doing that. They're already getting their tomatoes from Italy. So they were sourcing good food from Italy. But then in their fryer, I busted him on that. I'm like, nah, listen, so he switched
to beef tallow.
Beef tallow, the good beef tallow. And this is a scary thing. He says, yeah, but the problem is we have to replace it 3 times a week now, right? Which is really expensive. When you have the vegetable or canola oil in there, you could go weeks and it's the same oil. That's disgusting, bro. Right? Yeah. That's disgusting.
No, well, and it highlights another point. I mean, like when you're on this journey, there is no substitute for great ingredients. They just taste amazing.
That's why when people go to Italy, first of all, what don't you see in Italy? I don't know when the last time I try to go every year. You don't see fat people. Yeah. You do. But it's the dang Americans, right? It's the tourists. But you don't. Yeah. And they eat 20% more carbs than we do, right? It's like, so wait a minute, what's going on? Something's going on, right? Yeah. No, but unfortunately not Italy, but other European countries are starting to use more canola oil, vegetable oil, and that's unfortunate.
Well, and I'm hoping this is one of the things that comes out of the Maha movement, like some restrictions on some of these things that are clearly not good for you, right? But profitable for industry and all that sort of stuff.
Even people, when I go to dinner with them in our industry, right? People that most people watching this would even know, they don't ask. I mean, I'm telling them I'm allergic. We even have seed oil cards. Yeah. I can't have any of this, right? And restaurants, look, we go to the better restaurants that accommodate, right? But we're not going to Kentucky Fried Chicken, right? That's right. Or I don't know the names of some of these places, but we're going to places that make it the way we want to make it. And if you tell them they're allergic, they're on it, man. They're on it, right? Because they'll come out and be like, can't have this sauce, can't do this, you can do this, this, and this, and this. That's what we do every time. But I'm amazed. We go to dinner with these people and I'm like, oh my gosh, like they were ready to throw down. Like, it's like, if these things stay in my body for 2 years longer, that's the half-life. Like I'm not giving in. I don't want a bite of something that has a seed oil. My kids were always embarrassed about this. My wife and I would jump the waiter, waitress through the hoops, and I always apologize in the beginning, right? I'm sorry, but don't worry, I'll tip very well. But here's the issue, right? But now they're on it because they've experienced the health difference with and without seed oils. So, that's right. All of them are like, man, they are robotic, just like we are. They will not be exposed to seed oils. I hope people listening to this get it, like, of how dangerous these things. I have to have Kate Shanahan on.
Yeah,
so
you should.
Yeah,
you should. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think about this through the lens. Mindy tells this story. Mindy Pelz tells this story of during COVID. I think she was giving a presentation online, a Zoom call with a bunch of teachers in South Carolina. Have you ever heard this story?
No.
And she is talking about all the things that you need to do in order to have a healthy meal and so on and so forth. And somebody had asked a question that revealed kind of the income disparity that they were experiencing in South Carolina. And just go, I can't afford to do that. And Mindy, of course, felt bad about, creating this kind of dynamic within this conversation. And then it led her to say, like, what can you do that's free? Fasting is free. You get rid of some seed oils and you do some other things instead, maybe a marginal increase in price. But there are some key things that can be done.
The big things.
That are healthy and cheap and or free.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're following kind of an intermittent fasting schedule, well, you're not eating. So, you can take the money saved from eating and apply it to other things that...
organic foods.
Organic foods.
I know organic foods are more money, but today I think you have no choice. And I always tell people, at least eat from the clean 15. Stay away from the dirty dozen. You can Google what those are, But you're right. If you are intermittent fasting, you automatically eat less, but you're able to eat meals to full, which is... Because a lot of people would try to lose weight. People still do this. I was going to say, in the 80s and 90s, but caloric restriction diet, just every meal, eat less. Yeah. Well, that's not how God built humans. We're meant to eat to full. And the body tells you you're full, and the body keeps its metabolism up. When you eat less by pushing food away, then what happens is your metabolism gets lower. That's why it works in the beginning. You lose 10 pounds, and then it doesn't work because metabolism goes down. and then you stop losing weight, and then even gaining weight, losing muscle. So it doesn't work. But if intermittent fasting, if you're eating 2 meals in a smaller window, at the end of the day, you've eaten less, but every meal you've eaten to full. Yeah. So your metabolism stays up. That's the powerful part about intermittent fasting.
Yeah. And once I got into that practice, I don't know that it's ever crossed my mind to count a calorie. Because if you're eating clean stuff.
No, exactly.
And you're eating to, being satiated, right? It doesn't take as much. And then I supplement too with, I think this is your prescription. I do a couple tablespoons of olive oil every day.
Yep.
MCT oil.
222
multi-chain triglyceride. And a little bit of butter.
That's in my book you can't get. So anyway.
Well, it's, when the lady came by my table last night, she goes, "Do you want some bread and butter?" And I said, "No, I don't care for any bread, but you can bring me the butter." Yeah. She just kind of looked at me who is this guy? And I slathered it on my steak when it came to the table. It was delicious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, you replace that. When you're in ketosis, the fat, you want the fat, right? You know? So do you know about, I'm going to test his knowledge here a little bit because you're such a, he says, you know what? Yeah, well, you probably, I'm not going to expect you to know what this is, but have you ever heard of the Randall cycle?
I have, and I don't have any context for it.
Okay. All right. So it's the people come off a ketosis diet, which it's a low carb diet, but most often it is in fact a higher fat diet, right? So they get used to eating high fats like we love when we're in ketosis. And then they move to, and hopefully purposely, but some people unpurposely move to a higher healthy carbohydrate diet again, which I think is great. It's appropriate, right? But they keep eating the same amount of fat. The Randall cycle says that your body, when you're eating high carbs and high fat together, will actually prioritize the carbs, and then it stores the fat.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So people they gain weight. So this is why low-fat diets actually work, right? Because low-fat diets were all the rage in the 80s and 90s, right? But low-fat diets have a problem. You know, people evolve away from fat, and fat is so important. It's so healthy, right? But because people were eating high carbohydrate, American standard diet, right? High carbs, and they were eating high fat, but bad fats, right? But still, the two together, you store the fat, you burn the carbs, you use that for energy, right? And you're not using the fat for energy. So the Randall cycle is when you come out of ketosis, you have to lower the fat because you're eating more carbs.
Gotcha.
So I probably taught some people.
I'm going to read up on that. But I remember back in my 20s and 30s, I was a big runner, marathoner. It's, everybody talked about carb loading. And so, as a 20-year-old, I was reaching for pizza to load my carbs instead of something that's probably a more appropriate.
I mean, listen, I have no problem with carbs. I preach diet variation, right? There's times where I'm in a higher healthy carb diet, and there's times where I'm in a very low carb diet, like ketosis. And I've even done short periods of time in carnivore, which is no vegetables, nothing, everything but meat. But people want to be in one camp or the other, right? It's like, oh, it's this, it's that. Carbs are bad, this and that. No, carbs are good, right? It's like your cells have the ability to burn fat or sugar, right? AKA carbs, and being metabolically flexible is what healthy people are. But most Americans are stuck with the inability to burn fat for energy, and they get stuck as sugar burners. So they crave sugar. And if they're not eating, you know what they break down into sugar? Their muscle. It's gluconeogenesis, right? So either way is bad, because if you're using muscle for sugar to get into your cells, your metabolism is going down because you're losing muscle. You get skinny fat. And if you can't burn fat for energy when you're not eating, now your body gives you cravings. So you break every diet. And I always say it's not your fault. Yeah. So these are like basic diet lessons that most people, even nutritionists, don't understand.
Yeah. Well, I remember too, Benazati shares his story about doing the carnivore diet. And he did blood panels on the front end of the carnivore diet. And then he did blood panels on the back end of the carnivore diet. And I want to say the last one he did was 90 days. And every single blood marker
got better. Well, you know what? We did something even more fun. I was part of that with Ben. Okay. Yeah. So Ben and I did something more fun. So he did a microbiome test. That's where you're testing your bacteria in your gut, right? And his diversity, which is the most important thing on the test, meaning the more diversity you have in your microbiome, the healthier you are, the better your brain works, the better your immune system, right? That's probably the most accurate part about that test, is looking at how diverse the variety of bacteria and the numbers. Well, he wasn't very good, which he had autoimmune, he lived a very unhealthy lifestyle, but that's why he's so good now, paying the purpose for Ben. But it wasn't very good. And so we decided to so back up. What the testing company recommend is a plant-based diet, high in all these fibers to improve his diversity, which makes sense to people, right? Because fiber feeds good bacteria. It would make a lot of sense to go into that diet. Well, we did the opposite. So he went 90 days in carnivore. That's just eating meat and fat, right? Zero, not one vegetable, not one bean, nothing that has a drop of fiber in it. Okay, nothing. Well, guess what happened in 90 days? His blood work was better, okay, as you pointed out.
Diversity improved.
Yeah. So what does that mean? That means that the microbiome doesn't just feed from fiber. It does feed from fiber, but it was feeding from the ketones.
Yeah.
And that's like, wow.
Well, didn't he say he had to go back and explain this to the chief scientist for the company that did the...
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, I predicted it. I knew that was going to happen, right?
Yeah.
It's like, because I watch it from the, symptomology sound. People go into a carnivore diet and their gut heals, right? Jenny McCarthy sat in that chair and she went, into a carnivore diet, right? And her gut healed, right? It's like, that means her diversity got better. That means, so these diets can be very, very healing for the gut.
So with the carnivore, let me ask you a question. Like I've heard that if you did carnivore through a smash diet, like sardines, mackerel, anchovies. I forget what all the smash elements are, but I've heard that it's that much better.
Yeah, so there's different levels of carnivore.
Yeah.
Okay. Some people say carnivore, you don't do fish. I do fish in carnivore.
Okay. Yeah.
Some people say you don't do eggs. I do eggs in carnivore.
Yeah.
I believe our ancestors, if they had it, they would eat that, right, in a carnivore diet. But some people even say you can use a little bit of honey, but some people are purist in that they just eat meat. Yeah. Grass-fed is very important. So grass-fed to grass-finished is very important. But so I'm a believer in, look, so many people today are reacting to plant toxins. What are plant toxins? They sound worse than they are. They're in plants for a reason, and they actually act hormetically in our gut and can be beneficial. But if you have leaky gut, they're very inflammatory. Lectins, phytates, oxalates, etc. And some foods have very higher levels of those. Healthy person, no problem. People that have gut challenges become problematic. So when you get rid of these things in a carnivore diet, it gives the gut a chance to heal, and then you have to add them back in slowly.
I gotcha. Yeah. And it's Dr. Gundry's written a lot about.
Well, Gundry, I think, as he functions from, and him and I would disagree on this, and I respect for the man, but he thinks just lectins are bad. Yeah. Lectins are a plant toxin. They're in almost every vegetable there is, but some much higher than others. So his thing is get rid of all these high ones, but I don't find that to be true.
It kind of falls under the hormetic stress principle.
Exactly. Yeah. Plant toxins act hormetically. But again, someone who's has an inflamed gut, their hormetic ceiling, meaning the amount of stress they can handle in the gut, is very low. So getting rid of and lowering those is going to help them. So many people are out there going, yeah, but that helped me getting rid of them. So Gundry's right. Well, yeah, it helped you, but the idea is to add them back in slowly, and it'll actually help your gut heal.
And it goes to your principle of diet variation too.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yep. Let's shift gears. And this is your new line of work, because you don't sit idle. Really applies, and we had this conversation. Many people today, almost everyone, goes on Google or Chat GPT in particular. Chat is the new thing, right? I use it too.
Yep.
And especially the younger generation, they are finding health things and they say, look, Dad, right? your son, my son, right?
Yes.
Chat says you're wrong, or chat says this, because chat is the gospel, meaning this is whatever they read and it must be right. So what I find is people are becoming more confused than ever, because if chat says it, it's real and it's right. But your new line of work has taught you a lot about that being not necessarily incorrect. This is an important topic because many people are finding all of their health advice with ChatGPT, and it can be very helpful. But tell us the problem. Tell them the problem with this.
So just as a kind of a baseline here, I run a small artificial intelligence company now, and so what we've discovered over time, the company that I joined has been using small language models for 12 years.
Okay, so you're going to have to, because when you told me this originally, I didn't even know what you meant by large language models and small.
So a large language model essentially takes all the information on the internet.
So AI, chat, takes all of this information.
That's right.
Okay.
And then it gives you an average of all the information you found on the internet.
So meaning it's finding things that are true, but things that aren't true.
That's correct.
Taking an average, and then it gives you an answer here.
That's right.
Okay.
And that's why, and large language models are fantastic, by the way. They're super useful for a whole bunch of different applications, but they perform better when you ask them more questions. And so the idea of being very precise, I've heard people even say they upload, their company's core values, the company's mission and purpose into a chat query and then asked it a very specific question, and you get a more precise answer.
Okay, because you're taking a large language and then making it more small with the more prompts questions you ask it?
Yeah, you're narrowing your query down by giving it more boundaries, right? And so as a general rule, the more questions you ask a large language model, the more precise the answer is going to be. And you and I were talking about this over coffee this morning. There's actually an academic paper titled "ChatGPT is Bullshit."
Jim something.
Don't remember the author.
Oh, no, that was the guy that wrote the book. Okay,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
So, and it's you can Google this and find the paper. And essentially, it's garbage in, garbage out. And so if you're not asking the generative engine the right questions, you're not going to get the most precise answer. Small language models, and the approach that my company has taken to the approach with data is we're a science company first that then uses scientific behavioral methods to understand how best to curate data. And so instead of taking an average of everything on the internet, for example, if I wanted to focus around Make America Healthy Again, I would collect and curate data in a way that like everything that's coming in means something to me. So I'm not taking an average of everything that's out there. I'm just ingesting the data that very precisely is the things that I care about.
Right. I got it.
And then when you apply a small language model to it, the small language model with curated data that has a scientific foundation doesn't hallucinate.
I got it.
And there was an NVIDIA engineer who wrote a paper, or published a paper maybe a month ago, that essentially said, and he did it with, I believe, Georgia Tech, essentially small language models are the way of the future for artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're not going to need large language models, but it's like anybody that's ever had a toolbox and has worked on a specific, project, having the right tool in your hand matters.
Absolutely.
And so if large language models hallucinate, I don't know, say 40% of the time, and small language models that operate off curated data that has this foundation of like everything that you care about in your problem set gives me an outcome that's 98% accurate.
Yeah, and companies, I think, are more privy to this because they need solid data, right, oftentimes. But the average individual looking for things is not, right? So, I just typed in just for fun, seed oils, right? And okay, it says they lower LDL cholesterol, right, when replaced with animal fats, right? Okay, because that was the bill of goods we were sold. Vegetable oil is healthy. We should replace all those saturated fats. All those animal fats are going to kill you. They cause heart disease. I just heard someone say it today. It's like, my doctor told me I need to get all the saturated fat and meat out of my diet because my blood pressure was high. I'm like, where do I start? Right? It's like, wow, this is still a model that's out there. Well studied in large population data. Some studies link them to lowering the risk of heart disease. There you go. Yeah. Right? And to diets high in saturated fats. So this is an example of ChatGPT. Is it lying? It's a myth. It's but it's a large language model. It's picking up what's that average talk that's out there, true or not.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful.
You have to be careful. And I think, so one of I'll give a shout out to these guys that run this organization called The Rational Optimist. Mm-hmm. So I subscribe to their newsletter. I get something that drops into my email inbox every Sunday morning. And it's typically some feature of technological advancements. They spend a lot of time trying to understand AI, nuclear power going into the future, other things like this. But the idea behind it is we're living in a really powerful age with all these things. And so how can you leverage them to make our lives better? Right. And so, I use large language models routinely, but they have specific applications and they have propensity to hallucinate, and you just need to be aware of the tool that's in your hand so that you're not misusing it.
Right. So be aware, right? Because it could lead you in the wrong direction. You could start increasing your rancid seed oils because ChatGPT told me it was good for my heart.
That's right.
Oh, and my doctor said it too, so it must be true. But it's simply not.
It's like going into what I would assume is the corpus of data surrounding research that's been funded by commercial interests, right? Many times those things are misleading. They're certainly biased towards the commercial interest desired outcome. And now this is a scientific study that's peer reviewed and so on and so forth. Like, how do you distinguish between that which is righteous and that which is unrighteous?
Yeah.
If you're ingesting that entire corpus of data. Now, if your corpus of data was such that you've curated everything to know that they were completely objective, double blind and random control, placebo, so on and so forth, could you set up small language models on that and get some sort of medical advice? You're going to get something that's much more precise.
Right. Yeah. So to your point, like what people can do watching this right now is you can prompt ChatGPT with better questions to bring the large model down to a smaller model. Meaning the more specific you get with the questions you ask, the better it's going, the more direct it's going to give you. So I want only double-blind peer-reviewed study, whatever the questions is. I mean, you can be very direct.
That's right. And it's not that the large language model becomes a smaller model. It's just you're putting bookends on what it is you want to know. And it's giving the model the context that you need for a more precise outcome.
This is affecting so many things, and your connection with government and that. You told me a story about how governments have to do this, right? Because tell that story that you told me, because it was something about like they're going in, maybe it's even the company I don't want to expose anything I shouldn't, but where they have to look at, for example, how Russia is manipulating certain smaller governments.
Yeah, there's a thing, malign influence, even in recent times. There's a term of art, cognitive warfare, where there are state actors and in some cases non-state actors that conduct influence operations in different populations. And it's a principle of warfare. I think it goes back to Clausewitz or one of the early theoreticians of warfare, but you've got to win the hearts and minds of the population that you're at war with. And so this idea of persuading people to believe certain things or to do certain things. And I mean, this goes back to the Soviet Union. I think Stalin was probably one of the first to get engaged in disinformation. Disinformation so that you can control a population.
Well, Hitler did it too. I mean, right? You know, they had everyone.
Everybody's, as nation state actors, has some awareness or some activity in these spaces. And so we have adversaries. And I don't think for a second that, like in the social media environment, for example, that some Russian element doesn't come to work every day.
So is the Chinese
taking a jackhammer to American values and things that are politically divisive for us as a country.
They're creating a lot of that division.
They're if they're not creating it, they're at least increasing the gulf between two different parties. And so that division is really dangerous for our country.
Yeah. And so a lot of that, some of the governments have to figure out oftentimes, like through these models, you know, how to, what do I want to say, combat that, I guess?
That's right.
Yeah.
You want to think of this because, you know, the American value structure, I mean, we're all about freedom. We're all about democracy. We're all about individual rights. We want to create an environment in this country that allows people to thrive and to thrive in their own individualistic way that's constructive. Societies like China, like Russia, like Iran, and other places. I mean, you know, we were talking about immigration on the ride over here. People aren't immigrating in large numbers to countries like Russia, China, Iran. You don't read anything in the paper.
They want to come here.
They want to come here. They want to come, be free, and be able to unleash their genius, their individual genius on whatever their passion play is, and work and be productive and all those sorts of things. And so we've got, I've called it before, a superpower in the Western countries in general, in America in particular, because there's a lot of immigration in Europe. There's a lot of immigration in North America. People are coming to Canada, the United States, and other places. And it's just like, if you were to basically break down what our demographic profile looks like and the push-pull features of immigration, those are hard to design. Like, you kind of get stuck with the hand you're dealt, but it's the fruit of centuries worth of investment in the American way.
Yeah.
People want it. They want to come here and they
again,
want it.
Countries like China and Russia want to erode that. Yeah. Right. And again, I don't.
But they can't concoct a pull factor in Russia to persuade somebody to go, hey, why don't I immigrate to Moscow?
Yeah, no.
Like, no, they want to come here.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, but I know Russia has been, use this in smaller societies through AI, you know, again, changing the thought process with the goal of taking over. I mean, there's this stuff in our country. Our government has to be privy to this, that this is being used.
Yeah. Well, and it's in this realm of what I'd characterize generally as cognitive warfare. It is so dang subtle.
Yeah. Exactly. I know you're hedging this. You know, you have a lot more knowledge than most of us do around these government things, and but I just want people to hear that this is going on.
Yeah. So the advice I give to friends and family is, don't get your news from the online environment. Yeah. You know, if you want to go to a couple reputable sources of news, I mean, it's very hard to not get bias in news reporting these days. And so I think the antidote to that is to find 5 or 6 that are as close to unbiased as possible, and develop a sight picture based on the reporting that, you know, I had a friend who once was surprised that I said one of my sources of information is Al Jazeera. And it's just one more line of position, you know, not that everything that's on Al Jazeera is right or wrong. But, you know, when I look at different cultures, different news reporting apparatus.
You just want to see their angle.
You see Al Jazeera, BBC, you know, whatever the channels are, and somewhere in there the truth lies.
Yeah, you want to hear every angle that you can, right? Yeah, Epoch News, it was really, their whole goal. I watched an interview with the CEO of the company, and it was fascinating to me because it was started, I think, just out of a suburb in New York. A college kid, it was the Asian population, was watching the bad information that their country was putting into the system, and they started APOC News, and it was just a little paper thing. And then now it's gone into this non-biased news source that, often gets criticized by both sides, for their stories, but they really take an unbiased view. And it's old-fashioned journalism the way it used to be, where they literally are trying to dig to the truth.
And it's never been perfect. But, I have this thesis when I speak in think tanks and national security fora. I have a topic that I've inartfully coined as the erosion of permissiveness, right? And it's this idea that things that you take for granted, let's say the oxygen in the room here, right? Like neither one of us have stopped for a second to say, do we have 21% or do we have something less, right? And so as the oxygen in your environment goes down metaphorically, now all of a sudden you don't have the freedom to do things that you would have done had it been at 21%. And whether it's as a Coast Guard ship driver, I still marvel at the fact that the Houthis shut down the Red Sea. Like this freedom of navigation, sea lines of communication, like these are things that we take for granted. And somebody comes in and challenges that in a way that is meaningful. And so, your ability to function as a sovereign nation or as an individual is suffering from things that erode the permissiveness to be able to go, I want to decide that I'm going to go do something, but you can't.
Are you more concerned about Russia or China?
Yes. Yeah. They're both bad actors.
Yeah.
I think in the world of malign influence and misinformation, they both follow different approaches. I think the Russians are they're certainly more mature as a propagator of, and the way I see it is like what started out as disinformation in the 1920s in the Soviet Union to control the population evolved a little bit into misinformation, which evolved a little bit into information that is contextually inaccurate. And so a lot of times these weapons of cognitive warfare can be accurate, but contextually not properly applied, that effectively deceive you into believing what it is that you believe. And so it's just the world's complicated. But it's for decades has been a nation state problem set. And my concern is as we go forward, sub-state or, transnational criminal organizations or whatever the case may be, will have these tools that used to be the domain of nation states in the past. Talk about chaos and the opportunity for chaos.
Well, I think that's all, the goal oftentimes is to create chaos. I think that's, for sure China's goal. Is it true? I mean, people make this statement, China's in no economic position to be a true world power and we don't have to worry about them militarily. You think that's true, or you think? I
believe that they're quite capable of being a world power, and we should be concerned about them militarily. They've built up a lot. The challenge I have is, again, I see this through the lens of a ship captain. You can assemble a ship's crew, but you have to train them, and you have to have different people at different pay grades. The non-commissioned officers corps in our services, chief petty officers in the Navy and the Coast Guard. I'm like, these are really technically expert people in their area. You can't just have officers and not have NCOs and not have junior people to do all the different functions. And so when you bring a ship together, you need to train a lot to be ready. And so this idea of readiness is an important one in the military. And so China can have 10 aircraft carriers someday. Does that mean they're operationally ready to engage in warfare, naval warfare?
Yeah.
I haven't read enough. I'm good friends with this geopolitical strategist, guy named George Friedman, written a lot of books, New York Times bestsellers. And And I've kind of chirped at him a couple times to say, I don't hear enough about the readiness. I hear about the number of ships and the number of airplanes and the number of hypersonic missiles and all the weapons of warfare. But like, what about the people running them?
Yeah.
And how well trained are they to function that way? And
you better have an organized system from top down.
Yeah. So while we got to keep an eye on them, and we've got to engage them as a serious adversary in some respects. I think we'd be foolish to underestimate them. I think we'd be foolish to overestimate them.
All right, I've pushed you there as far as I can. I want to go back. You have a very, from your experience, what you did, at the Coast Guard with government, understanding how to organize systems. You have a very opinionated view on Maha because you care. You care about making America healthy again. It's a passion of yours. It's become. You talk a lot about setting up something that's durable, meaning that what's going to happen when this administration goes away, right? Durability, meaning it has to last. These things that we have now, the worst thing that could happen is 4 years from now, 5 years from now, another government gets in or another administration gets in and it all goes away. Yeah. And all the stuff that we just did on dyes and all the stuff that we're doing to make vaccines better, all this stuff could just go away like that. So what is your theory here or solution even? And maybe I can get Bobby to hear this.
Well, so in my experience, now I should back up and say what my experience is. So I spent 8 tours of duty in Washington, D.C. I've worked in the House of Representatives in the legislative process as a liaison for the Coast Guard. I've been in think tanks. I've done 3 different assignments at the National Security Council staff as a policy director, a policy senior director, and ultimately as a Homeland Security and counterterrorism advisor to the president. I have shepherded either controlling the pen or my team has controlled the pen, dozens of strategies, policies, and implementation plans to the finish line. And so while my hope is high.
And you worked for the Trump administration, the first.
I did. I worked for George W. Bush's administration in mid-2000s as a policy director, and then Trump administration as senior director and Homeland Security advisor. So there are 2 general ways to make policy. There's a top-down approach and there's a bottom-up approach. Top-down approach is faster. Top-down approach.
That's the one Trump loves. Fast.
He loves putting points on the board. I get it. And there's a natural tension between top-down and bottom-up.
Okay.
Right? So the benefits of top-down is you have more control. You may or may not collaborate with more people that are stakeholders. And you're able to get something to the finish line in a much faster way. Instruments of presidential power, I'll bookend by saying there are a bunch of different instruments of presidential power. On one side is the executive order. I've just got to draft it, properly staff it. The president signs it. It's in force.
Boom.
Right? The other end of that spectrum is like painstakingly slow, and that requires engaging 535 members of Congress in developing legislation that they then send over to the president to be signed into law.
So the only way this can happen is if they control the House and the Senate, then.
Not necessarily control, but if I've always said, and this is not an original thought of mine, but good policy equals good politics. I think you can get people on both sides of the aisle around. Yeah, I mean,
I used to think that in the past, but today it seems like it's much harder to do that. It seems like, the last thing that they voted on, like this Charlie Kirk thing, it's like, they all voted against it, right? I mean, like, how could that be possible? So it seems like everyone's lined up and they're not budging on either side.
So this is, as you said, if all of your policy making is through executive orders, when the next person comes in, if they like them, they might stay in force. And if they don't like them, then there's a wholesale dismissal of all those things until they can develop new things.
Yeah, and I think that like them or not, the powers at bay in big food, big pharma, big chemical are so powerful that, like them or not, it's like even if the people like them, right? It's like those forces, the next administration, they're going to be washed out.
It could very well be.
Right.
I
don't know the next administration. I'm saying like they're, no matter what, they're going to put the pressure on that administration.
That's correct. And don't ever underestimate the industry lobby in Washington, D.C. They're everywhere. And I shared a story recently. I was on a different podcast. When I was in the Coast Guard's liaison office, House of Representatives, there was a milk lobbyist, a dairy lobbyist that used to come into our office 3 or 4 times a week.
I was going to make a joke. The milkman, they used to come to our house.
The milkman. But he's a super nice guy. And he was there to lobby for the dairy industry. But his son was in the Coast Guard, so he would make a point of just coming by and being friendly. And I think I saw him on average 3 or 4 times a week. That was his
delivering
job.
a lot of milk.
And so if that's the dairy industry, where else in big food? Where else in big pharma? Where else in other industrial controls, for agriculture and other things? People are up there working. They're elected leaders in our system of lobbying. And so there's a lot of powerful forces at play, And so when you're trying to develop or implement a policy that takes something away from some element of industry without maybe engaging the industry as a whole to go like, here's where we want to get. Like, do I just make you do it this year and cause a lot of financial pain on your industry?
That system makes you do it but it may only last a period of time. If you don't think, again, this is that durability.
The idea of durability is an important idea. And not everybody is patient enough to try to develop durable policy options. So when you think about, agriculture, monocrops, herbicides, pesticides, glyphosate, soil quality, like there's so many different stakeholders. I just had somebody, because I live on the Chesapeake Bay, I just had a scientist, PhD friend of mine, send me this report on the water of the Chesapeake Bay and what all these chemicals are doing to the water quality, right? And these things can be run off from agricultural plots and fields and chemicals and all the things. And it's essentially taking the oxygen out of the water, right? And that kills life. Certainly doesn't sustain it robustly. And so the Maha effort, in my mind, is going to cover a lot of things, from pharmaceutical issues to food-related issues to chemical-related issues to healthcare system-related issues, soil quality issues. All these things go into that really big bucket. But if you'll accept that a well-developed strategy, I had a professor when I was in grad school who said, if you've got a good strategy, consider it like an umbrella, and then everything under that umbrella is a point decision. It either supports your strategy or it doesn't support your strategy. And so when these things nest, as we say in the policymaking community, you have a strategy, and then you have policies that nest under that strategy that seek very specific objectives, and then you need an implementation plan. And so implementation planning is the hard work. And a lot of times people say, here's my new strategy. High five, everybody, we're done.
Yeah. They're not implementing crap.
But if you're not, so I'll give you an example from my time in the Trump White House. We developed a cyber strategy. We developed a cyber policy that was kind of concurrently developed with the cyber strategy. And then we rolled our sleeves up and we developed a cyber implementation plan. And that cyber implementation plan, the strategy was probably, 20 or 30 pages long. The policy itself was probably another 20 or 30 pages long. The implementation plan was 135 pages long. And so we took the strategy to the president, he signed it. We took the policy to the president, he signed it. And then we took the implementation plan to what they call in Washington a principals committee meeting. The principals committee meeting is comprised of all the cabinet secretaries. So they all sit around the table and they approved it. And I got some resistance. I won't name names, but I got some resistance to taking the cyber implementation plan to the principals committee meeting And yet I insisted on it. And I ultimately won the day, and we took it to principals committee meeting and got approved. So why does that matter? As soon as we got that implementation plan approved by principals, we sent it over to the Office of Management and Budget, who were in the process of building the president's budget. And we instructed them in writing to ensure that this implemented, again, strategy signed by the president, policy signed by the president, implementation plan approved by principals, get it into the budget. And I would argue that our cyber effort has been durable.
Durable.
So we did that during the Trump White House.
That was an arduous process.
It was. And these things take time. And again, there's a natural tension between bottom up and top down.
I get that. So if, Bobby could listen to this, right? So what would your advice be? Meaning, how could we make these changes? Because he's changing big food. He's changing big pharma. How do we make it durable?
Yeah. So I think part of that, and I know he's surrounded by really talented people on this stuff. I think Callie Means is on his team, and a few others that I've heard are quite good at these things. Engaging industry. And there are times when you just go,
engaging industry, meaning throw them some bones, meaning, so we're going to take seed oils out.
Listen to their concerns.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna make minor changes, you might be able to just do that through an edict, like an EO, an executive order.
President, boom, done, signed.
Throw the switch.
But it doesn't alter their big financial plan too much. Probably might stick. But if it does alter the finance of big food, like taking seed oils out of everything, you could be in big trouble. So you're saying involve them in this somehow. You
need to understand their profits interest to some degree.
Okay.
Right? Because nobody wants to run an unprofitable company.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're bound by law to pay attention to their shareholders' interest here, right? And so is there a way to create a tectonic shift that might be implemented over the course of 5 or 6 or 7 years that makes it palatable for a pharmaceutical company or a agricultural chemical company or a food company to go, you need to be here in 5 years' time?
Yeah.
Or we're cutting off whatever.
Absolutely. Right? And so then you help them give a plan to get there.
That's right.
So now you're giving them an incentive to change and making it more durable.
Well, and that's good policy, provides incentives.
Yeah.
Good legislation. You want to incentivize people to do the right thing. But if one of the things that I've always challenged people for, because this stuff is so complex that you can really get into playing whack-a-mole on a couple of big things and not take a holistic view. And so what I challenge people to do when you're sitting around the White House Situation Room on a decision-making decision is step back and go, what's our desired national outcome? And ponder that for a few minutes.
I think Bobby's doing that.
I think he is. And I'm not saying, because I don't have any particular insight. Yeah. I'm not saying he's not doing these things, but if I were there involved in this is what I would expect to see. So that strategy, you don't just work on strategy and then go, all right, strategy's done. Now I'm going to start working on policy. A lot of these things you can work on concurrently, and you do it through an interagency process and engagement with Capitol Hill so that you don't get some quarter of who you need to support this to revolt against your effort.
How's he going to engage big pharma? I mean, he's taking some big things. I mean, he's changing the way they vaccinate. He's, going to make safer products, right? I mean, he just hit Tylenol, right? I mean, so what would your advice be?
Some of these things are hard. And I think he's, from what I've seen, he's fearless in pursuing what he thinks is right.
But if it's too much fearlessness, we can put executive orders in place, but the durability may not be there unless he engages them.
I think he should engage them. He might have some bad things to tell them. But he needs to listen at the same time, to listen to what their concerns are, because we don't want industries to go upside down. Because the fact is they're not going to. That's right. So, right. I mean, if someone's small and they're putting out a bad product, we can take them out, right? But that's not what's going to happen here. It's so. Your point is he has to listen, and He should listen. He should listen because if there is a pathway to save a company's profits interest and at the same time achieve his desired outcome,
all right, yeah,
then let's find a pathway.
Yeah, I think it's great advice.
But those things take time.
Yeah.
And they need a good comm strategy. There's been a little bit of, my observation is there's been a little bit of secrecy there about what's being developed. They decided not to put the strategy out publicly and instead mete it out a little at a time. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Like it's the prerogative of the White House and the administration. But if you want this to survive 3 years from now when we have another election, the idea, I guess, that I'm putting forward here is this idea of durability. Like, is there a way to durably create a strategy and policy that allows everybody that has a profits interest to not lose their profits interests and go, here's a pathway. But, when you look at things like soil quality, I've heard of a variety of different estimates on how many more seasons of harvest we have because these monocrops and chemicals and everything else are killing our soil.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, if everyone's goal is really to make America healthy again, where it's, I think many people watching this would be like, that's not their goal. Their goal is just a profit, right? It's like, but I think that right now there's so much pressure. Their goals, they're going to have to come into, some type of thing. Okay, how can we still make profits and bring health or not at least rob health, right? So again, it's this, right?
We're doing so many things to deplete our health, right? Yeah. And we just need to arrest those things. And I'm reminded, have you ever seen the film The Biggest Little Farm?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
So the guy who made that, his wife, and the producer are all childhood friends of my wife.
Yeah, that's great.
And but the thing that captured my attention on this film, by the way, if you haven't seen the film, go watch it. It's fantastic for all ages. But they essentially took over this monocrop farm in Southern California, 220 acres or something like this.
Yeah, it was a complete disaster in the beginning. Yeah,
and then they essentially restored the ecosystem. It took them the better part of a decade to do it.
I know, with every possible bad thing happening.
But then with all the wildfires in California, it's my understanding that the soil is so moist and vibrant that it didn't catch on fire. And so stuff is burned around their farm.
Wow.
But has not burned their farm.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
And so, like, if I were the governor of California, maybe I'd say, hey, this is a good exemplar, and maybe we should start farming differently.
We won't talk about the governor of California because that would be a whole nother thing that I'd go ballistic on.
That's it. But my point is, if you've got a way that works and that leads us to a better future, why not try to pursue it? And I know that that's what they're trying to do with the Maha stuff, but like soil quality, it's important.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Bobby knows that.
Yeah.
It's really important. But again, you have big agriculture, coming at you. Companies like Monsanto coming at you.
Of course.
I fear for his life. I do. He's really trying to make it work. That's why I wanted to have this conversation with you that understands the durability of these decisions. I mean, look what he's accomplished already. But again, where are we going to be 4 years from now? I don't know.
That's right. And I guess that would be my only point in the whole conversation is consider those things that are most durable, because that's gonna be great for us in the long run. But we were talking about this on the way over. Midterm elections are in another year. Maybe one of the chambers of the Congress flips. The president could be a lame duck at that point. It becomes that much more difficult to pass legislation and do things that are on your political agenda. And so, just step back and say, I want this to be enforced in 10 years.
Yeah. We got to pray, folks. We got to pray. Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
I think we all want to see healthier children, and that's the goal. It amazes me that people hate this man because he went from this side to this side, and it was painful for him.
Yeah.
Because he took some family hits.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But he did it for the love. I know the man. It's like he did it for his heart, for what he's been called to, and that's the health of children. And to know, listen, I sat at dinner table with him before he had any aspirations to run for president or any big position. And his goal was the same. Yeah. And it's like, and I'll tell you, no one did it better than him.
What was the speech by Teddy Roosevelt, The Man in the Arena? It's not the critic who counts, or how the strong man stumbled and fell, or whether the doer of good deeds. I forget how the whole thing goes. But what matters is the man in the arena whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood. It's about striving to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And that's always honorable.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's what we've
gotten into this quagmire in our country of all these commercial interests driving things. And I'm not naive. I mean, this is the way it works. Right. But if you're going to change things in a durable way, you just need to think about it through that durability lens.
Yeah. I've squeezed you as much as I can, man. You have a lot of wisdom.
I don't know.
You do.
That.
Yeah. You have a lot of wisdom. Yeah. You've been around the political game. You've been around government. You've been in the military. All of it. And it yields a lot of wisdom. It does.
Yeah,
it does.
Well, I want to thank you, Dan, because this has been interesting to me intellectually, but your work has contributed greatly to improving my health condition.
Yeah.
And it's been through a few of your surrogates as well. Mm-hmm. But
it's great.
And for John and Ben and Mindy, if you're out there listening,
yeah, I'm sure they'll hear it.
Thank you guys for what you've done for the Fears family.
Yeah.
But this is like, the pathway is so clear to me. And if the environment around me can just be improved to make it easier, because so many of these environmental toxins and bad seed oils and all the other things are ubiquitous.
Yeah, that's it.
And you really have to be on high guard.
Yeah, well, and that's why this, government part of this conversation, policy, everything, making things durable. That's why I wanted to have the conversation, because at the end of the day, I can sit here and on social media and just, combat these problems. But unless something changes, from the top down, maybe driven from the bottom up, it's going to be a waste of my time. Yeah.
Well, be solutions oriented. And try to come up with durable things that are sustainable in ways that improve. I lost, this, Kate's dad, we lost him a couple of years ago, lifelong farmer.
Yeah.
Handling chemicals
I've watched those people become arthritic, unhealthy, chronic inflammation, and no one's attributing it to the chemical that they're being forced to use. I mean, and I say forced, of course, everyone has a decision, but meaning from an economic standpoint, it's become very hard for farmers. But look, you're a busy guy. You didn't have to be here, fly in for this, but
dude, I'd do it for you.
That's why, thank you. That's why you need to share like this, because people need to hear this, man.
It's a passion.
They need to hear that comment. It is, man. I know that about you.
I think it's attributed to Marilee from Pain to Purpose. Was she the
Pain to Purpose?
Originator?
Yep.
And the idea behind it is a simple one, but this has become a purpose for me.
Yeah.
Because you guys, this community restored something to me that I thought was forever lost.
Well, that we talked about that AI technology. There's a lot of companies that need that, right? How do they find that? And you didn't come here for that, but
no, they're I just run a small boutique company that's 100 people. But if you wanted to track me down, I'm sure you could. You can do it through Dan. But
don't do it through me. Give them.
But
don't do it through me.
But no, it's there are a lot of different.
Give them a website or something.
Boutique capabilities, and so our website is magi.ai, and you don't get a whole lot off our website.
They can contact you because y'all offer a great service to businesses that really help them target their clients and build, so you're doing
tremendous capability.
Yeah. You're doing some high tech stuff that people
pay attention to where AI is going. And again, you can Google those two reports. The first one is ChatGPT is bullshit. Again, it's a peer-reviewed academic paper.
Yeah.
and interesting title. And then the second one is this one that NVIDIA and Georgia Tech published, saying that small language models is the way of the future. I don't think large language models ever go away.
Yeah.
The applications
like you said, there's a place for it, but people are getting deceived by it too.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
From the man that knows. So
thank you, Dan.
Do that. And keep following me right here because we're going to bring more topics like this. Dr. Pompa Podcast. Tell your friends.